Not me accidentally having the music on the wrong setting. Oopsies. It was literally silent this whole time. My bad. Meanwhile, I was over here vibing and stuff. Oopsies. Shit like that happens. Still trying to get used to streaming after, let's see, 4 years? Oop. Oh well. Hi everyone. How y'all doing today? Hope y'all are great. Sorry I didn't stream yesterday. I was having internet issues. You didn't know things were mute? Yeah. It was all silly muted. But yeah, we're back with some more Sims 4 Rags to Riches. Last time we got ourselves a little house, cute little house built, you know. And we've been growing some plants. Also started being a casual streamer. If that ain't the definition of me, I don't know what is. Is all the sound volumes good, hun? Yep, awesome! I think my internet was going, so I didn't stream it today because my internet was going in and out constantly. Game sound check? I don't have music turned on for the game, so I'm gonna turn it up actually, it's quiet. There we go. That should be better. Yes, we're back. We back. And yeah, so she's about to go to work, but I'm just gonna pause it. Yes. Last time we were working on building a house. If you don't know what the Rag or Riches challenge is, basically you go onto a plot in The Sims and you have 0 simoleons, so you basically gotta build yourself up from nothing. I'm gonna hang out in this little house. Maybe try to find someone. I'm not sure yet. Also, of course, take care of all my crops while we're here. And then until we get a second person, I think this is the biggest I'm gonna put my house. Then a second person, then we can work on adding like a little child's room or something. Because, you know, there's no point in grinding for money if you got no one to grind the money for, you know? You know? When I feel like I'm looking, like trying to look at 2 different cameras, there's only one camera that's right in front of me. Anyways. Okay, we can evolve you. Anything else good here? No, doesn't look like it. Oh, chocoberry! My chocoberry! Take out some grass while we wait. Never mind, she's saying not to work. But yeah. So, like, hopefully we'll have, like, a big house. We'll have tons of children and stuff. Actually, I'm going to show you guys something. If you guys didn't see, I put out a tweet asking, because I had a, last Sunday, my throat was hurting a little bit. Or, it wasn't hurting a little, it was hurting a lot. It hurt to talk a lot. I was working on another house. I think it's here in Chris. No, it's not. Where is it? In Willow Creek? Where did I put this house? Pearl Bay? Wilton Bay? No. Where did I put this house? Oh wait, I put it here. I put it here. I found it. I found it. This I've been working on this. I was working on this a little bit that day. And this is gonna be like our quote unquote final house. And which will be the final place to move, but like we'll work on our lot that we have right now, of course. And so yeah. So as you can see, it has a lot of stuff. We have it has a lot of stuff going on. I'm still working on it a little bit in my free time. It still has a lot of work to it, but get in there. Just get in there. Yeah, this is what it looks like right now. I'm actually genuinely kind of I'm not happy with the window placement. But I'm happy with the house design. Like, I'm actually proud of myself for this house design. I can definitely do better with the window placement, though. But yeah, just want to show you all that. Yeah. Anyways, let's head back to our actual plot, which is here. There we go. Oh, cool, I got promoted to speedrunner. Something I've never actually even done before and have no desire to. So we'll need to reach level 4 entrepreneur skill. First things first, let's see, career. Let's live stream so we can get our daily tasks done. Then we'll work on our garden. Oh, and let's evolve that quickly. There we go. Alright. What are you doing, girl? There you go. I don't know what the hell she was doing. And then we'll work on the lawn a little bit. I don't think anything needs to be watered. No, nothing needs to be watered. Alright. Alright, level 5 in video gaming. Awesome. So we'll work on taking out some of this grass. Cool, I got 4 followers. Lovely. Take out all the grass. Take out all the grass. Take out all the grass. Come on, just take out the grass. Take out all the grass. Okay, she's gonna use. Oh, she's trying. I didn't realize I was even broken. No wonder she's trying to go to it. She's trying to repair it. Awesome. Reach handed us level 2. Those were words, I swear. Let's see here. I have a shit ton of influence points. Let's use those. Oh. No, never mind. They're closed right now. Let's sell all. And then resume your chicken nuggets. Because, you know, chicken nuggets are yummy. I know. Oh, hey, we got a cow plant! Why are you facing that way? It's like literally the weirdest direction to face right now. Here, let's fix that. Let's put you here. There you go. Now it's good. So she'll eat. Oh, God, I've just pulled an all-nighter. It looks like the cow plant's vibing with the music. That's funny. Look at him go. Listen to it. It needs more cowbell. What? Yeah, sure, I don't care. Go ahead. Alright, I'm awake. Let's finish taking out our grass. And that looks like that's it for all the grass. Okay, we also got a plant here we can evolve. So let's evolve that quickly. Alright then. Alright, I think that's good. I think we're good. I need a water. And we'll go to work. Do-do-do-do. Yeah, okay. Okay, see, mailbox. Alright. Oh, let's have you feed it. Our cow plant. Yeah, we fed our cow plant. And we're off to work. And we're back. From work. From work. Okay, do another live stream quickly. Career live stream. I still love that little detail that rings. That's awesome. Hey, Whooping! How are you doing today? I'm doing really well. Happy my internet is back. No, you're not gonna dislike gardening. Christ, girl. Why would you just like gardening? You literally have a garden on your side yard. Like, what the hell? Gonna try to dislike gardening. Good lord. Oh fuck! It's Harvest Fest. Oh wait, it's Harvest. I can get seeds. Wait. And I can also sell gnomes. Forgot I can sell them gnomes. Alright, well, appease you, give you some coffee. Appease, get coffee. Appease, get coffee. And then we'll harvest all. And appease the gnome, get coffee. Alright, and then we're just gonna wait. No, I want you to, like, literally sell all. And also feed it. Sell our plants. Oh great, Power Conservation Day. Just what I want. That's exactly what I want. See, I'm at level 2. So I should, let me turn down my game volume a little bit there. Alright, I should be able to upgrade. Yeah, I can upgrade some of these. I can also get a better mattress just to help. It helps out, so. So we'll do that, and then we'll work on Harvest Fest stuff. Alright, let's see. Is there anyone I can invite over? Oh, sorry, I was trying to go up to the gate, alien! I forgot about that. Dawn, get over here. I completely forgot that happened. Right, more choices. Friendly. Deep tops? No. Is it small talk? No, I'm trying to... Beer, there it is. Be thankful. Okay. Alright, that's that. And then let's... More choices. Cocoa, grand... Oh, fuck! That's right! The power's off! God damn it! Can I, be thankful twice and have that work? No? Alright then. Damn power going up. They got the power off on Thanksgiving. The fuck wrong with y'all? I'm gonna work to drag some of these into my inventory. Just so there's room. And not too big a mess. Dawn, I swear to God, if you get eaten by that cow, it's over. It is over. Alright, bye, Dawn. Goodbye, Dawn. All the seeds for me. Oh, fuck! Why does that keep scaring me? You're not gonna eat cake, are you? No, you're not. Okay, good. That's good. All the seed packets for me. Let's water all. Quickly. No, wait, what? No! Oh, milk, what was I feeling? I was feeling flirty, that's right. Damn it. Got eaten by the damn cow plant. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that. You know, I can't let her get eaten twice, because then she'll die. And we don't want that. We genuinely do not want that. Christ, man. Let's see, what else we want to do. Let's switch over to the gardening one, actually, because we're doing so much gardening. There we go. Awesome, I got 86 on my holiday. Nice. Nice. Is there anything else around here? I can upgrade this, can't I? Yeah, I can upgrade this. Nice! Yeah, let's upgrade this. Wait, can you not paint? Yeah, you can. Okay. My Harfest is over. Alright, let's sell these gnomes. Thank you for all the seeds, gnomes. They will forever be appreciated. And so will the money you go for. Alright then. We'll sell that, and then we'll keep cooking. Oh, it's last first thing's like 24. No, oh, that's 2 days. Fucking hell. Okay, tempted just to like get it up to like the highest quality and then just sell it. Quite frankly. No, no, you stop that. I'm not risking it. Go here and sell all this. And before we forget, we're gonna feed you. There you go, he's fed. Now he shouldn't get hungry and eat me. And eat me. Odd jobs. We can do odd jobs. That's true. So I think on the weekends we'll do odd jobs. But for now, we got work and 14. What odd jobs are there? Oh, check back at 3 a.m. or 3 a.m. 8 a.m. I can read, I swear. Alright, let's petition for repeal. The power conservation, because that's fucking annoying, and we'll vote here as well. Eco-friendly appliances. No, I want to do the sharing is caring. Alright, and then let's go get some signatures. You. Never mind, you're a B-lister, I can't talk to you. Okay, here's some people. You, sir. Sir. An introduction. Alright, and can I get you to sign? Here it is. Okay, it's under interest. Got it. Thank you. That's one signature. You can get out of here now. I don't like care. Is there any plans that need taken care of? No, not looking like it. Alright. Let's see here. Did that repeal signature. Awesome. That's 2. What are you doing? Play with? I really would rather if you didn't. In fact, go ahead and feed it again. I just want to be safe. Okay, you. For the introduction. More choices. Friendly. Interest. Ask for appeal signature. There we go. We need 2 more. Okay, let's just go ahead. Water all. No one else needs watering. I need your signature from the introduction. Oh, hey, it's our bud. It's our bud. Invite in. Let's see what it is. Sure, you guys give me a moment. Let me get this man's signature. Interest. Oh, you hang out. You got me a pizza! Holy shit! Yes, I'll take a pizza. More choices, friendly, interest, ask for appeal signature. Hey, Minette! Hi, I'm great. Got eaten by a cow plant earlier. But other than that, we're great. I think that was all the appeal signatures I needed. Awesome. Sure, you can call my best friend, I don't care. Alright. Can y'all get out of my bedroom? I was about to say, I'm surprised there's no grass, but here's the grass. That one didn't scare me, actually. Yay! Go here. Go here. Go here. Take out grass. Take out grass. Take out grass. What's up? Yeah, sure. Go ahead. I don't care. Oh. It needs feeding. Feed him. Okay, well, bye then. I guess he didn't. What he wanted to tell me wasn't that important. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna open up these seeds. So get ready for lots of noise. Yeah, it'll go to work. Oh, we got lots of goodies. That was just a bait challenge. Just kind of normal challenge, you know, just start with 0 millions, go all the way up to 1 million. Pay for get a job. Can't hire services, that type of stuff. Just your basic. The cowbell ringing is so funny to me. How much longer I got on this? A day? 21 hours. Awesome. So we're gonna do something dumb here. We're gonna plan all these. Oh, no, no. Don't eat the lemon. No. Don't eat the lemon now! No, you're not gonna dislike gardening! It all has a reason, I swear. Bye, Dawn. Is it a good reason? Probably not, but it's a reason. There we go. All this will be planted eventually. Oh, I know money trees. Because that's cheaty. Stop planting for now. Here, let's have you use the restroom. Feed a cow plant. No, stop planting, stop planting. Oh fuck, wait, fuck, that, feed. And we'll cook a little something up. Let's just eat some basic eggs and toast. And then we'll finish working on our garden. Or whatever the heck you want to call this. No whims. No, I hate the whims. I hate the whim system in Sims 4. It's so annoying because of the fears. The fears get so annoying. It's not that I dislike the whims. I dislike the fears. It's just constant. Yeah, the fears are too real and they're too constant. How much longer do I have this? 8 hours, okay. Don't worry, I'll reorganize this in a bit. I just didn't feel like laying them out properly right now. Alright, there we go. Sell all our plants that have grown. Go to sleep, girl. How long does it work? Oh, she doesn't work for 3 days. Okay, perfect. And I'll have to keep an eye on her when she wakes up. Make sure she doesn't go eat that. No, we're not going to a talent showcase. I am trying to sleep. In fact, I just don't want to risk it. I think I'm just going to sell the cow plant. I think what we'll do is we'll let the cow plants grow, and then we'll sell them. Alright, let's see. Here we got a lemon tree. We're gonna move the stuff back here. Basil bush. Rose bush. Chocoberry. Begani flower, or however you say that. Bonsai shrub. Yeah, green plant. Okay. Carrot plant. No, it's like a honey bluebell. No, it's rose. Okay. Lemon tree. Snapdragon. Bluebell here. Green beans here. Carrots here. You're here. Let's see. Lemon tree up here. This is bluebells, right? Yeah, it's bluebells. Daisy. I don't think we have any daisies yet. Cherry. Are you cherry? Yeah, you're cherry. Okay. Lemon. Parsley. We don't have any parsley yet, I'm pretty sure. Green bean. Cherry. Orange pumpkin. Sweet mint. Cherry. Green bean. So if we get more green bean plants, I'm selling them. Like that one. Cherry tree. Grapevine. Pretty sure I don't have any grapes going yet. Carrot. Sweet mint. Isn't this sweet mint? No, it's orange pumpkin. Sweet mint. Cherry tree. We could sell that. Daisy. I think this is daisies. Snapdragon. Daisy. There's our daisy. Alright. I want to say sage up here. No, basil. My bad. Grapevine. Lemon tree up here. Organization. I'm attempting. Daisy. I think this is Daisy. Yeah, this is Daisy. Do I have potato? Bonsai. Chocoberry. Rosebush. Basil. I want to say I have potato somewhere. Okay, I guess I don't. Unless this is potato. No. Not potato? No, grape. Okay. Grape. Grape. Bell pepper. We don't have a bell pepper yet. Daisy. It's Daisy, right? Yeah. Daisy. Any more daisies we're gonna sell? Bluebell. Isn't this bluebell? Or a carrot. That's carrot. Cherry. Bluebell. I knew it was somewhere around there. Chrysanthema. Alright, so we're gonna go bring this up here. Blackberry, we do not have. Actually, I'm gonna, just for some separation. Tulip. Daisy. Oh yeah, that's right, I sell daisies, I sell them. Lemon tree, sell. Daisy, sell. Spinach, we do not have. Sell lemon. Apple we do not have yet. Apple. I know it's not fun watching me organize, but this will be helpful in the long run. Raspberry we do not have. Lemon, cell. Bird of Paradise we do not have. Apple tree. Isn't this apple? Yeah. Coconut tree we do not have. Crocus flower, I'm pretty sure we do not have. I want to say this is spinach. There's spinach. Ain't much, but it's on. That guy recently died, and I'm so sad about it. Lemon tree. Lemon tree. I know, it's very upsetting. He lived a long life, but still, it's sad. Lily flower. I'm pretty sure I don't have a lily flower. Let's see, I have potato down here. Where's my potato? You potato? You are potato. You are the potato. Yellow tomato. Bell pepper. Do I have yellow tomato anywhere? No, I do not. Okay. What is this music? Pretty sure we don't have any blueberries. Lemon, cell. Lemon, cell. Plantain, go here. Crocus flower. I want to say this is that. No, it's raspberry. Here it is. Bell pepper bush is down here. Daisy we sell. Daisy we sell. Yellow tomatoes. Here. Lily. I want to say we have lilies. Bird of Paradise. Coconut tree. Blueberry. Or am I losing my mind? I'm losing my mind. We do not have lilies yet. Okay. Bell pepper down here. We're almost done. Blueberry. Spinach up here. Pretty sure this is spinach. Yeah. That there. Plantain. I want to say it's this. That's lily. This is plantain. Yeah. Boop. And last but not least, another plantain. Alright. That's all of them. Yep. Alright. Perfect. We're done. We finished. Look at all those plants. Well, what I'm going to do now is we're going to get some sprinklers going. It's probably just, I should have done that from the top. This isn't just Stardew, you know what? At this point, I should probably just play Stardew. Alright, that's all I can get for sprinklers right now. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do a feasible. We're going to have her water all. She's about to be done. Be discomfort. I hate how water all doesn't actually not water all of crops that can be watered. I hate that so much. Alright, it looks, I think, yes, I've watered everything! Awesome. Now she can kind of just do whatever. She, I know, yeah, she can do work stuff. Let's live stream. Alright, alright, level 3 entrepreneur, awesome. Why am I playful? Oh! That's what. That's why. That's a, oh, 0. No point in getting it then. Selling it then. Can I... this might be a little cheaty, but I'm gonna do it because I'm tired of her asking. Hey Faye, how are you doing today? You shall be lurking. I appreciate the lurk. Have a nice lurk. Oh, it's prank day. Lovely. Sell all. That's good to hear. Alright, awesome. Level 7 for gardening. Take out the grass. Take out that grass. And we'll get started on some prank day stuff. Once all the grass is gone. All the grass is gone when she's all done with those. No, just not. You still gotta take this out. And take that out. Then she's all done with the grass. Okay, now go do whatever you want. Gonna wash your hands apparently, and then more choices, get leftovers. The fuck is this music? Alright then. Now she's eating. Let's sell all. I need you. Get over here. Oh no, you're a B-lister. I can't talk to you. Actually, I need to harvest the sage. So I can plant it. Let's sell this extra one. Okay, plant. No, no flea market. Don't have any money for that. I need water. I do not. Alright. Let's go find someone to prank. Oh, I should have gone to the flea market to prank people. Hey, you! Mother! Hi! Don't you run away from me! Do some pranks. Pranks. Okay, we're almost done. Almost there. More choices. No, you're not. I need to prank you again. Let me prank you! Thank you. Okay, I'm done pranking for today. Okay, then the live stream. Our plants look good. They are looking good. Oh wait, no, this one can be evolved. Evolve. Awesome. And we're getting to the point where we're starting to get some more dissatisfaction points. What do I have in terms of parts? Can I upgrade anything? Not looking like it. Okay. What should we do then? What shall we do then? I guess we'll color her do whatever. Oh, can I vote? Remember, children, exercise your right to vote. Let's go for a Dawn. Oh, I'll say maybe I can invite someone over, but it's late, so let's not do that. How can I raise on my entrepreneur skill? Engage in side hustles. Okay. More choices. Let's talk about social bunny. Why not? Why is the dial-up internet tone playing? What the fuck is this mix? Go ahead and add our whole contact list here. Why not? All right. Is that their Simpson story? Cool. do. Oh! It is break time. Those of you who don't know, I take a break every hour, which also means you should take a break every hour. Grab a snack, eat some lunch, drink some water, use the bathroom, stretch, go touch grass, and I'll be back. And we're back. Oh, wrong screen. There we go. We're back. Hope everyone had a nice little break. So we got our plans here organized. Thank you, Drew. Guess right now we're a little bit like a waiting game. Let's see, the sprinklers are working. Is that all? Oh, look at me in my cute hairdo. Me and my cute hairdo. No, not gonna just like gardening. Damn, she really just wants to just like gardening. Okay, let's pause it. And we got here. Cocoa berry. Cocoa berry bush. Here we go. Now we got a bonsai. This is bonsai, right? Yep, bonsai shrub. Put that there. Spinach. I'll need one more. And then we can sell the rest. Yes. We can sell our lemons. Coral kiss. This should be down here. Like here, right? Oh no, it's this. Yeah. Is that there? Is that there? Sell the rest. Yes. And then potatoes. Potatoes, I believe, are down here. Just potatoes? No. These are potatoes. Yeah. So that. Yes. Alright, and then we're gonna go through and plant. What is it, Dawn? I don't think it's a good idea. No. I think these mails delivered. I got bills. Lovely. Wait, girl, no, you're not done. I need you to plant these as well. Alright, there we go. That's let's look for that. Yep, and she's playing everything. Alright then. Let's go pay your bills. Which I can't afford. Oops. Ooh, excuse me. And the world, I can just do this. We'll sell our plant. We'll sell a chair. And that should be enough. Yep, that's enough. Alright, we'll look at our video daily task we did. Alright. Also, I am eating some Cheetos right now. So sorry if I'm a little bit like black. I'm eating Cheetos. Let's invite over Zon. Hold on. Awesome. Hug. And then we go. Oh, in fact, actually. There. We'll do that. Fine, finish for repairing the computer. Alright, here we go. Now you two talk. What? No, you're not going to bed. Do the fucking hand, I don't care. Oh, what are you doing here? Oh my god, just kiss his fucking hands. Just kiss his fucking hands! There we go, finally, okay. Now we can go at it. Bye, Dawn. Alright. Had a little sleep in before work. Let's unlock this computer. Looking for everyone but household. Oh, thank you for cleaning my sink. Thank you for cleaning my sink. And my ground. We'll go to work, don't worry. Girl, you can get up. How does this last for? Okay. It's gonna be gone in a bit, so. Alright, and we're off to work. Sprinklers are still looking good. Not broken, which is good. I will let you get some water collection going, though. If I really want to keep it sustainable. Fix the trash can up. No, we're gonna do actually, we're gonna, we're 20 hours. We should be fine. Let's head out. Let's head out on the town. Let's head here. Cause hardest spot in town. I can steal some stars for money. One more. Alright then. I'm gonna steal some stars. What are you doing? I thought you were automatically gonna steal some. Pick up. Pick up. Pick up. Pick up. Any over here? Not looking like it. Nope. Alright. Alright, now we're gonna go travel. We got the the tiles or whatever you want to call them. Let's go here. Well, you know, we'll bring Dawn with us if he wants to come. He's probably asleep though. Drink some water, everyone. Just about knocked something over there. Oopsies. he actually came with us. Wow. Alright, let's go in here and hang out. Oh fuck, did we find Dawn unattractive? Did we find him unattractive? Oh, we find him very unattractive! Oh no! I can just attractiveness. Choose my preference. I'm choosing my own preferences. Screw it. I don't care about that and that. You're an adult. Obviously, always gonna like purple and green. Alright, that's kind of it. Okay, so I actually do need to... Alright, so hopefully we'll actually start finding some people attractive. So now what? Proceed is basically... Okay, yes, we fixed it. We're getting all the way. Hello, Mike! How are you doing? I want to say hello to my video editor. Mike, hello, Mike. Why does she have a... Since when did I get a Monokuma hoodie, and why is the fucking elder wearing it? I have so many questions right now. Just out here bobbing and partying. Dawn over here listening to music, I guess. Who are you even? Oh, it's you. I can't pronounce it. Anybody know you just? I didn't recognize him at first. Right, because I love Monokuma. Oh, hey, yo, you love Monokuma, you love Monokuma. I probably just accidentally added it. Alright, it's in the morning, let's head home. We're up clubbing all night, or something like that. How are crops doing? Looking good, looking fine. Well, sell sage, we got enough of that. Else here. No. No. No, alright. Let's go ahead and also invite Dawn over. Alright, come on over, Dawn. I no longer find you ugly. Find a day. Bitch! Brighten day up. Try to calm down. Force facial hair. Good repair tips. Mention knowledge seeking nature. I'm honestly very tempted just to make Drew. Just so you don't know, the Drew Sif in my chat, he's not only my head mod, he's my boyfriend. I'm very tempted just to make you Drew. I'm very tempted just to say fuck it and just to make you. Oh, Drew, are you just now finding out about this? I don't know to break this to you. We've been dating for almost 4 years now. Is this a bad time to break it to you that we've been dating for almost 4 years now, Drew? Let's take out some grass. You're welcome, honey. I love you. Oh, here's a broken sprinkler. Repair. No, I love you, cutie. Yeah, yeah. Alright then. Running level 5. Okay, turn on. Can I set them to a timer? Because there's no time when my water bill is right now. We're gonna save all. You got sound. You did? You didn't hear it? Wait, you didn't hear it? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Can you try it again, hon? Why is it twice? Did you hear it that time? Fuck me! Okay. Maybe that'll fix it. I'm not sure. Just refund yourself again, hon. And we're gonna... Yeah. I thought I disabled all you. Oh, fuck, I mean to hit a screenshot. No, you're not gonna dislike handiness. Alright, handiness level 5, awesome. She's got work. Oh, I'm working on it, bitch! And so I can refund myself others. And so I can't. Oh, maybe I can go through later and refund it for you, hun. You got back a couple thousand. Alright. No, that she just fucking T-posed her. Okay. Yeah, good. Now just get to work throwing it all away. Invite. Oh wait, no, it's early. It's early. It's early. Sell the sage, sell potatoes, sell the carcasses, however the heck you say it. Sell the spinach, sell the lemons, harvest those. It's fucking Winterfest. Put that there. Sell the rest, pause. There. Plant all that. Alright, I think that's actually everything, so we're just gonna go ahead and hit sell all. Super sell is, yeah, level 8 is what I thought, so sell all. There we go. Oh, and she's sick. Check for Winterfest gifts. And then shopping. Purchase medicine. Let's purchase medication. Do that. And then take the medication. We got a piano book. I guess we'll just get that in our inventory. Okay, exit. Oh, there's Dawn who got it for me. Oh, how nice. Can I invite you over? Oh. Awesome, Dawn will be over. What's up with you? You're just hungry, don't worry, we'll make a grand meal. More choices. Cook grand meal. Cheapest is 62, we'll do that. Let's give you Judith Ward's, it's a good tile. Okay, call the grand meal. Call the grand meal. Because for some reason he didn't do it. Now look at your food! Done! Fine. Let's see here. Let's go ahead for now. We're gonna enable all. That doesn't work for some reason, it seems. Evolve. So evolve all the ones that can be evolved. Fine, I'll go through and turn them on all on. Okay, now the meal's counting. Okay, good. I can go sleep, I don't mind. Let's pause this extra quickly and let's put this away into the fridge for leftovers. Let's keep on turning them on. I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna have to turn on and then go through and turn them all off. There we go. All right. Okay, can I get one more going here? Nothing? Okay. What about work? I need to live stream. I need to do all that. Okay. Career. Let's live stream. Come clean. And then we'll take out grass. Alright, got 4 followers. Awesome. Take out the grass. Take out all the grass. Oh! Hi there! No, also friendly introduction. No, friendly introduction. Friendly introduction. And then friendly. Ask for present. Get the incinerator? Wait, the what? Oh, fuck, he got me a grill! I don't want to sell that, though. I will need to place these, so let's sell them. Y'all, Santa got me a grill! Let's sell all. What's she doing? She's doing something there. I don't know what. Okay, we got a lot of parts. Let's see what we can upgrade around here. Self-cleaning. Water recycler. Just so it will increase the value of the house, and also some of it will just make my life easier. Also, Winterfest was a success! There we go. Now it's all set to upgrade everything you can. Which is perfect. Except maybe these. Oh, her key's full, so it doesn't really matter right now. I'm also going to go ahead and sell these robotic parts because I'm not going to be using them at all. Then we'll do sell. And actually, now I think about it, I have her gardening skill up so high now. I don't need these sprinklers. I think this was just kind of a waste of my time and money. So we're gonna go ahead and sell them all. Yeah, okay. Yeah. My skill's so high that she'll just do it kind of automatically half the time. Right. Lots of upgrading has been done. Alright. Now she can just do whatever. Actually, no, you can't do whatever. I need you to get out here. Come on. Sell all. Actually, no. Let's have you harvest all of them. We'll have you harvest everything. Yep, here we go. Now she's gonna go ahead through and harvest everything. Okay, I guess she's just gonna automatically go through, even though you can literally use this stuff to fertilize, but okay, whatever. We got some money, it's okay, I'm fine with it. What's up, Clara? Okay, and we also need to work on graphing, so we're gonna take a cutting. That. And graft this onto it. Oh wait, that's I literally got a new plant? Huh, interesting. What if I were to... take cutting of that. Graft it onto that. Cutting of that. And we'll graft it onto this. There we go. Because sell all. Yes, you can like gardening, thank gosh. She finally likes gardening. Which means a lot of times she'll do it all by herself. So it's harder fruits, veggies, and herbs again. Okay, she's done with that. There's still some down here though. We'll have her do so more choices. Harvest fruits, veggies, and herbs. Hey, what's up, bud? Looks like she's overheating. Outfits, change outfit. There. What's up, Rico? What do you want to give now? Alright, awesome. Yeah, she's still going through and doing it. And it's a full team sports day. not even harvesting everything, God. There we go, finally. She's gonna get some sleep, probably just right before work. Yep, she works in 2 hours and she's up almost ready for promotion, so you get the entrepreneur skill up. Which we can do. We can do. Okay, bye, Tevin. She'll go to work. And send Dawn a text. Check yourself out. Why not? Six things. The majority of the world. Oh fuck! That's awful. That's actually awful. Let's put this away. Don't you have work? Or I guess you went to work already. Okay. So you're at your computer, we'll go ahead and have you do a live stream. Let's evolve that. Evolve that. And soon, eventually, we can we'll be making a ton of money off this farm, or the garden, that I can literally quit streaming. I think what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna do streaming all the way up until the highest job level, and then I'm gonna quit, and we're gonna focus mainly on that farm. Let's go to the rewards so quickly, because I don't want to have to deal with that. Do unique appearance as well. And let's do waterproof and observant. There, perfect. All right, that's some good traits. You did not hit my plant. My plants are okay. And the pizza's gone bad. Let's put that in there. Sometimes it's 6 a.m. Alright, 8 a.m. We're gonna invite Dawn over and try this out again. I'll say I have a roof, so my house, my house should be fine. Oh, hey! Something can sell! Mr. Dawn. Syntax. And then you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna ask him on a date. Because why not? Again, we're gonna invite him to current lot. Dawn will be over. Wait, he's here? More choices. Romance. Affection. No. Physical, no, affection. Confess attraction, why not? That's gonna date. Alright, we did it. We asked him on a date. Good. Let's head somewhere nice. Let's go to... I think there's like a bar around here. Yeah, it's a lounge. We'll go... Oh, wait, no, let's get to the bar. That's the bar. The bar. Alright then. Sit and talk. So let's sit together. And then pause it. Talk about best bait. Okay, let's flirt. Why am I talking about crabs? Why was I talking about crabs? Sir, can I help you? Do you fucking mind? Both of you out. God. Can I even kiss him yet? I can kiss his hands. Okay, we'll joke. Funny jokes, inside joke. More choices, funny jokes, joke about body hair. Why are we sitting across like this? Have deep conversations. Right, first I'm gonna do more choices, romance, physical, nothing there. Friendly, deep conversation, be deep thoughts, right? Yeah. Awesome. More choices, friendly, deep thoughts, deep conversation. Are you not gonna have a deep conversation? First kiss, fuck it. Fuck it, we ball. Fuck it, we ball! He likes the color blue. I can accept that. Romance. I'm trying to get this up to gold so bad. Nothing there. Okay, deep conversations. We'll try it again. Why did they all just T-pose randomly as well? Friendly, deep thoughts, deep conversation. Just count! Fuck it. Alright, well. I'll just talk with him then. Nope. Alright, got silver. Cool. Let's head home. That worked fairly well. Other than the fact it didn't count my D conversations for some reason. Grr. Go home. Alright. Alright, don't know why build item was removed, but okay. She's bored because of discussion and watching grass grow. Lovely, okay, let's harvest all. It's still raining as well, which is interesting, to say the least. What's up, Dawn? No, you literally just went on a date with me! Bitch! Oh, I can supercell now. Awesome. I just really need some backup money right now, so we're gonna go ahead and sell up all our crops. I just need some backup money. Go here. Place in the world. Place in world. Place in world. Place in world and place in world. Right? Let's go to build mode. And sell these. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. Then work. Yeah, should that work? Alright, good. We got $5,000 in reserves. Just what we need. Alright, then. Off to work we go! Can I take some money from here? I cannot. Alright. Okay, 3 days. Okay, let's see. Career, live stream. Does this increase your entrepreneur skill? It does. Okay, so we just need to farm live streams then. The Dawn. We'll do Dawn. Wait, what was that about 69? Murasaki has amassed 69. Nice. Streamer followers having... That's really funny. Oh, I have a package on the way. Exactly. Awesome. Go to bed. What is it? Oh, it's New Year's Eve. Lovely. Alright, I don't have TV. I can make a resolution though. We're back to singing. More choices, make a resolution. We'll lose weight. Ah, that sounds exactly how I sound singing, to be honest. I made a resolution. Awesome. Let's see. Countdown. Yeah, since we did it. Party spirit. Practicing. Let's go jogging. Actually, no. You're hungry. Let's get... Let's see on spoiled food. And then get leftovers. And then we'll go jogging. Oh, cool. Not upgrade. We need to take a speedy shower. That'll get us energized. Right? Or maybe it doesn't. Alright, it's gonna have to fertilize. Good. Alright, actually, we're gonna... Let's have you go jogging. Just to lose some... Try and lose some weight. Actually, no. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go to the gym. In fact, this gym. But before we start working out, time for my second break. Remember, everyone, go touch grass, drink some water, stretch, use the bathroom, eat a little snack if you need to. Let's finish this loading. I will be right back. When this finishes loading. When this finishes loading. There we go. Okay, it's finished loading. I'll be back. And we're back. Right. Let's go to the gym. Let's go here. I mean, work out here. Let's go. Thank you, Drew. Hope everyone had a nice little break. They're just bothering this woman. It's really funny. What those ankles doing? Also, I need to shave them. Oh, I just ate shit. Running. No, stop that. Alright, and let's go get a shower. Alright, and hopefully we lost some weight there. Alright. Now, we'll head out to a bar and gain back all that weight. My student has one. Here we go. Well, I need to make sure it has a TV. This place, I'm fairly certain has a TV. Let's go with Dawn. And if it doesn't, oh well. I think there's a TV in here. There's no TV in here, is there? No, there's not. Well, oh well. We're gonna order a drink. Let's order sweet and spicy. I do love the karaoke bar idea too. It's really nice. Alright then, just use the bathroom. Let's travel somewhere. Let's see if we can find a TV. Where would TV be? A gym. We'll go back to the gym. We'll get back to a gym. At least most channels have a TV. This one does not. Alright, never mind. I'll just go back home and buy a TV myself. That's exactly what we're gonna do. Alright then. Let's go ahead and buy ourselves a TV. Because at this point, I'm done trying to find one. Whoa. There we go. We'll just put it right here above the table. Why not? Why not? And we'll just have them hang for a bit until countdown time. Let's also do some more, let's see if we become best friends. Yeah. Whoop whoop, best friends. Oh, that's loud. Holy shit. Friendly. Gossip. Gossip. Then watch New Year's Eve TV. And watch the countdown to midnight. Shishubi! Shishubi! Oh, did they kiss? Wait, did they just kiss? Oh, that's a nice touch. There we go. Finish the holiday just in time. Now I generally don't care what she does. Right, New Year's Eve was successful. Okay, I gotta go watch from there too. Oh fuck, why is that loud? Oh, I got good reputation, yay! Thank you for the lore cryptic. Or sure, you go by sure shot now. That's right. All right. Let's see here. Let's check our plants. Let's sell all. So, oh no, not sell all, the super sell. And sell all that. Got some more money going. Let's grab that business plan then. Dawn, what's up? Yeah, I figured you didn't, considering the fact you're supposed to be my boyfriend, but alright. Alright. I love the fact that I'm pretty sure this is like the old Sims games. Okay, we're gonna need some more wonderful stuff in a bit. There we go. That should come in the mail eventually. Speaking of which, vote on action plans. Green gardening. Let's do this one. There we go. Good to go. Ready to go. Alright. Oh, cool. She just randomly started programming. Alright. I can afford a lawnmower, actually. So let's get a lawnmower going. Let's see the sound of this. Or maybe I just had to look it up. I might just have to look it up. Lawn. Hey, a lawnmower. Where's the lawnmower? 1 second. Content. Custom content. Where's the lawnmower at? Oh, there it is, here it is. Whoop. I'm gonna put it in our inventory. Alright. And I'm pretty sure she'll use it automatically whenever she needs to. Right. Then the live stream. Right there. Let's keep doing some live streams then. Wait, how's our entrepreneur skill looking anyways? It's getting there. Also, she has like just a bunch of random skills I don't remember her getting. Live stream. What's up, Mila? Yeah, go for it. That's a good, Don. I guess at some point we became friends with that person. I guess. Everything's, grown, or not grown. It's kind of a standstill right now. So I really need to get another person going. So Dawn invited me out. And we're gonna do something slightly stupid. Not really though. Dawn, friendly. Ask to join household. Clean this off. Boop. And he's not gonna bring over any money. Alright. Let's expand the house a little bit. Just needs to accommodate 2 people right now. And so it'll be like a little guest room. And it'll just turn to a children's room. So we probably gonna wanna where do I wanna put this? I probably wanna expand it over to here. Yeah. And we'll just move the couch. Because, I mean, not really any point in having this couch. Not really a living area. So I think that's what we'll do. Leave that. Do that. That. Got some doors. This is nice. This is a nice door. Alright. Okay, never mind. Oh, wait, we have a window I gotta get rid of here. How many bets if it wasn't for that door, that window would have been there for a while. And we can just use a nice little one of these. Excuse me. Put that there. Okay, actually, let's just gonna quickly throw that there. We're gonna turn this around to here. We're gonna put it there. Desk. Just gonna scoot the desk into this corner. There. Easel. Here. There we go. Alright. So. Move the toilet here. Sink and the mirror here. Okay, okay, so we're gonna... Nah, fuck. No, the game's lagging a little bit, so give me a moment. There we go, put that there. Grab this. Put it here. Grab this and put it here. Let's grab another bed here quickly. But I really like this bed. It's just expensive. I think that's all we're gonna do for now. I know the house is a little bit ugly, but we'll roll with it. We'll roll with it as we get more and more done. What's up with her? Oh, from the Grand Meal. And Dawn is so romantic. Yeah, no, we ain't doing that. We're gonna be Fortune. Okay, he's getting a skill day. So, let's see, what does he work for? Oh, he does not have a job, so we'll have him join a career for $500. We could do coloring. That could be fun. Let's have him do coloring. That's a fun one. Alright, so that'd be 402, so control C, money, 402. There we go. Alright. You say you're still door there. Yeah. Okay. So for you just have to prepare food. That's not bad. Yeah, sure, I can just like writing. And then you... Okay, I don't know why he has a special day and she doesn't, but okay. Dawn, let's have you cook something. Cook. Something simple, something easy. Let's see. Oh no. Okay, there we go. Let's just do a mac and cheese. That's simple and easy. Alright, Don, he did his... Oh, he has to do it 4 times? Oh, fuck that. Fuck that. So 2,000? That's for no water. So our main issue here is water. We're not gonna have enough money to pay that bill. So I think what we need to do is we need to pay that bill. Then get work on getting some of the water stuff going. I think that's our best bet. Which means I need you. Career. Live stream. I need you all to get promoted. So how cook me all pizza rolls? Go cook those pizza rolls. Oh, I doesn't count. That makes me sad. Let's have you cook some more. Cook. Oh, let's eat some fruit salad. My new skill is... Oh, it's super close. Right, Ella. You can always do that, chair. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you? How was your stream? I'm gonna have him cook. Singing with cheese. Corn dog. Alright, you're almost done with the entrepreneur stuff, so one more live stream should do it. Okay, he's finished all the food and stuff. So let's start on there. And but he's ready for work whenever. Anything in here you need to get up? I mean, he could catch a quick nap. All right. So we're almost there for the yeah. So supercell. That's great, Chair. That's great. I'm glad to hear. What's up here? Okay, works on that job offer. And we're stopping all that. No, because we just got a way better job. That was actually kind of lucky. Let's put a job. The culinary. Yes. Alright. See, Supercell. You see, we're getting a lot of money from this garden. What are you doing? He just ran out, kissed her, and then ran back in. I guess so. We can sell all those because now we can pay bills and get mail. Because this should be all hers, yeah. There we go. All right. Oh, so that. Stop looking at grass grow! Christ. Let's read this. Learn some piano skill while we're here, you know? Alright then. So you need to get your mischief up. You can mischief online, right? Right, jokes? Is that mischief? No, it's comedy. Okay, mischief level 3, I'm pretty sure. He's level 2 right now. He's gonna cause some mischief. You! Gregory! You are Gregory, right? Yeah. Or Jeffrey, not Gregory. Words are hard sometimes. Mischief, prank, scare. More choices, mischief, pranks. What's that spot? More choices, mischief, pranks. Shook of hands, leather. There we go. Right then. With that outfit on is really funny too, so like. Troll the forms, there we go. You still reading that book? Or is it just stuck in your hand? Oh, it reminds me, you need to go to the gym. Da 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 bum. So workout. Are you build your skill mischief? There we go. What do you want, Mila? Okay. Do a little work, and then I'm gonna kind of quickly take a shower. And, Shave. There we go. Then after this, she should go to work. Shouldn't you go to work? Yeah, there it is. Go to work. I want you to work hard. Right. How are you doing your mischief skill anyways right now? Mischief, it's getting there. Woo, pro gamer. Nice. Alright, for your next promotion. Okay, so what we're doing, so like I said before, we're gonna get us all the way up to here where it gets a check mark and then she's quitting. And focusing only on her garden. Actually, no, it's a short job. She'll be fine doing it. Alright. And she's down. Oh, and she's up. What's she bored about? Boring movie. Oh, lovely. Okay. She does yes. Whoa! Let's yawn first, apparently. Looks like all of it taken care of. I don't know what she should do. You know, actually, no. I know what she's gonna do. We could do this Strangeville stuff just for fun. Let's do the Strangeville stuff just for fun. Why not? It's not gonna harm anything. I mean, well, he can stay back and work on his skill. Strangeville? To the library. I think that makes the most sense. Live, live, love. Live, live, love. Alright. First things first, let's go buy curio from the curio shop. If it's not even open, never fucking mind. Let's talk to some things about Strangerville then. Gotta go Strangerville. think I've even seen, like, half these houses. Like, I don't think I've seen the inside of this one, or the inside of this one. Because I just don't like Stranger Velvet's very much a flop. That's all else here. That was a flop. I see the inside of this, and it technically has no cooking space. And this one's just small. But yeah. Anyways, let's head back up here. You need to build your mischief skill. Okay. You. Talk about Strangerville. Hey, you! Try to talk to Ted. The crazies are coming out! Well, actually, no, because we got two people here we can talk to about strangers still. Okay, we just need to talk to one more person about it. Talk about Strangerville. You. You just appeared out of thin air. What's this? Seeing a pretty sim. Okay, that's interesting. Let's change our outfits to something that's cooler. And talk to you about Strangerville. Excuse me. Alright. Curio shop open. Hours of operation 9 a.m. Okay, it's about to open. Let's go ahead and head over here. No. Buy curio items. We'll have to buy a bug, that's for sure. Then let's go ahead and examine the steel door. And then we're going to, head back home, fix her needs. And then we come back. I'm taking my break a little early, you guys. Just gonna be 5 minutes like I always say, it's to be the last break. And yeah. So once it's loads, I am going to go some... I'm gonna take my break, not go somewhere else. God. Okay, I'll be back. And we're back. Alright. Let's go tap 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 on the door. Examine that. Alright, this door's locked. Let's get the evidence over here, and then we'll head back home. You can use the bathroom. See, did I miss anywhere? Not looking like it, unless I kind of... no. Oh, they come back here or something. Alright, anyways, let's head back home. And fix our needs. Thank you for the alert chair. Sorry, I just now saw that. Hope you have a nice lurk. Alright. Let's fix these needs, so. Sleep. What's up, Molly? Count me in. The secret location? Oh, okay. She's actually just going by herself. All right. How are you doing your mischief skill? Level 3. All right. Go back to trolling the farms for me, please. Okay, he's heading out to work. It's okay, she'll just skip stream tonight. No biggie, I've done it before. Things starting to get evolved more, so let's head back to nature here. Finish botanist. Evolve some stuff. Alright. Then we'll head switch back over to this way to the Strangeville Mystery. Pancakes and Supercell. Oh shit. God fucking damn it. Extinguisher. Dawn! Oh my gosh. Only $412 in insurance. Lovely. Come on, let me replace stuff. Clean the floor. It's not funny, Drew! I could have died! It's all replaced now anyways, right? We're all good? We're all good. Alright. Drew laughed at me getting set on fire. I see how it is! I see how it is! What? Sure, go for it. Are her needs better? Well, no, she was trying to cook something. Something simple. Let's do onigiri. Single serving. Fire, you close laughter. Also, before something else bad happens. I do want to hit save. There we go. Exit out of that. And Donna also is hungry. Is there any leftovers? There's not. Alright. He can make himself some food. So she'll eat and double supercell and then get back to the Strangerville. That is the plan! Alright. Let's go here. Supercell. She still needs to lose some weight. So Supercell. 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 And Supercell. Super Suit. Anyways, why am I like this? Alright, I think that's everything to sell. Yeah, looking like it. Alright. So let's head to a gym. Try and get that resolution done, because it'll be good for her. Go to loan, like always. Alright, let's work out. Break a sweat. Whoop! Alright. So while you do that, you build your mischief skill. Alright, sweet. Fitness level 3. It's awesome. Still trying to lose weight though. I forgot I can just stretch this all the way up. For literally everything, I can just walk. I head home. Loading, loading. Oh god, my VTuber. Where is it? Come on. Come back. Where did my model go? There we go. I don't know what happened there. I done disappeared. That's what happened. She's going to work. And they're off both working. And she's back. First thing we're going to do, not Vampire Secret. Our choices, career, do a quick live stream. It should be good. Alright. So when she finishes the live stream, she can do whatever. Nice. 9 followers. Okay, kindergarten. Oh, okay. Wait, why are you embarrassed? Oh. What is it? Okay, you're hungry. You have any leftovers? Maybe not. So it's, dinner, meat. 21, 17. Cheapest one there. Alright then. Alright, let's head back to Strangerfield then. Back to Strangerfield we go! Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Let's say I think these reset. Alright, that should be all I need. Awesome. Then we'll do the dossier, I think how you say it. File. And open. So, question scientist. Alright. So let's go back to, like, let's say the bar probably. To the bar we go. No one with us. Oh cool, I got an achievement. You military. Question about the military base. Alright then, you. Find a bug. Alright, we got a bug planted. Talk about Strangerville. Alright, and then let's ask to hang out. We're gonna become friends with this guy. Okay, wait, I can check the inventory. Secret inventory. How'd I do it? Or Check your curio shop's secret inventory. Strange spores. Request key card. Do that. Got the secret diaries. Get the key card. Awesome. Let's head back. And let's head back to the lab. Boop boop. By ourselves like always. Okay, let's use the key card. Oh, he's following us still. Oopsies. Okay, collect 15 score. Plus there's a symbol of hazmat suit. Traverse. Okay. Where's our buddy? Here he is. You. What's your mischief skill? Deduce. And that worked somehow. Okay, scan area. Put the spores in our inventory. Let's head over here. Scan here. Then we'll scan here. Awesome, Don's mischief level 4 now. Alright, let's see. Construct that. That should work. Where's my chapstick? There it is. Let's see if they have any helpful information. Alright. To the bar! To the bar! Woo! Oh fuck, that's loud. That's loud, okay then. Alright, the balloon begins. Alright, let's find a scientist. Thought I was she was a scientist at first. I was like, oh wait, no, that's the movie Star Trek. Find a hazmat suit. Actually, you know who will have a hazmat suit? Okay, the game just fully crashed. Well then. Give me a moment. I do not remember the last time I saved was. Oopsie doopsie. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why you save your game often. Good lord. It did not want me to get the hazmat suit. I generally don't know when the last time I saved was. I can't believe my game fucking crashed. Like, good lord. Yeah, that's me right now, Drew. Because I generally don't remember the last time, or where I was last time. Or when it was saved last, I just don't know. It's taking a long time to load. Slightly concerning. Slightly. We might just have to call it streaming here. Because it's not, it's not. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, there it goes. When was the last time? Oh, it was ages ago. Well, we're not doing Strangerville anymore. Fuck that shit. We could do the beach stuff. The beach stuff could be fun. Let's do the beach stuff. Fuck yeah. The Sims 4 doesn't have autosave for some fucking reason. Fairly certain does not have autosave. Yeah, there's no autosave. Go get our food. Please keep your mouth shut. What do you have in your inventory anyways? Oh yeah, that's right. You got that because I gave it to you. Still. Ooh. Big yawn. Sorry about that. Anyways, let's head to the beach. Beach, let's get to the beach. There's an alien. That's fine. Go here. By ourselves. This time around, make sure I'm going to save often. Alright then. First thing to do, get a suntan. Sunbathe and swimwear. Build your mischief skill up. There you go, we got some tan. Eat a coconut. Still get a coconut. As I say, it's like those vending machines have to go get it. So let's head here to the sandbar. Let's take a look here. What's going on here? Are those? I've never seen these birds before. What? Look! They're so derpy. I love it. Buy meat supplies. I'm gonna get coconut and some roots. Oh, fuck! Get a coconut and a kava root. Alright, grab heat, go in here. Eat the coconut. What else can I get here? That's good. Now, sweat be good. Always welcome. There we go. Next we earn gold on a kava party. We'd have to go back home for that. So let's head back home to do that. We'll go home, we'll stream, get things ready for the party. What am I doing? I can just do that. Ba-da-da-dum. Here it is. Put this here. There we go. Excuse me. She's gonna work, and he's working. Yeah, works hard. They're both at work. Awesome. What I'm gonna do, see. Social. Plan social event. Kava party. Right? Let's go. Yes, you can skip work. Prepare that. How did I, select sim and make friendly. Okay. More choices, friendly. Oh, here we go. There's literally just right there. No, I need gold. Come on. You? Alright. More choices. Friendly. Kavatas. But let me do a test with him. There's so many people in here. I think this was a mistake having so many people in here. Can I just... More choices. Friendly. Can I not do that anymore? Fine, can I just do that quickly again? Okay, here. Actually, no, here's what we're gonna do. So she's gonna make that. Make it. Make it. Stop talking, just make it. Grab a drink. Right, then more choices, friendly. Covetous. It won't let me do the damn toast. What the fuck? Just let me toast! Well, this is a fucking disaster. Didn't get it done. I didn't get it done right. I should probably do it again, but with a lot less people. They'll eventually leave. They'll funnel out. Bye-bye, y'all. Get out of my property! Alright, we're gonna try this again. This time I'm only gonna invite like 3 people. Here we go. We'll invite all these people. Location, this place, let's go. Okay, you prepare that. You? No, I don't know you. You. Don't know you. You. Why are these random people in my house, honestly? Friendly. Covetous. There we go! Finally, we did it. Okay. They're wearing the same outfit. Why are you angry? Oh, okay then. Just talk with people. Not enough. Alright, call to grab drink. Okay, just keep, let's see, drink that. Not gonna do another test, let's make a group meal. Cook. Something easy, something cheap. That's the hope. Please don't crash on me. Oh, thank God. Eggs and toast. Group meal. Oh, wait, how do I do group meal? Cook and, oh, any multiple serving recipe. Okay, got it. Cook. Alright, eggs and toast. Family size. Let's go. No. Come on, hurry up, girl. There we go, we did it! We did it! Yeah! We fucking did it. Alright. There we go. So next we're gonna go find Simpson's beachcombing. Alright. Here. Solani. To the beach. Beach, beach. I'm gonna keep making that joke and no one can stop me. No one can stop me! Right. This grill. Some mushroom steak. Mushroom steak, because that's apparently a thing. Let's beachcomb for seashells. That's fun. I should just stop beachcombing? No, no. Oh, fucking hell. Go pee, girl. Go piss, girl. No. We're not being best friends. I'm best friends with the alien! Leave me alone! Alright, let's beachcomb for seashells. And football team sports day scared me. Excuse me. Let's go back to grilling. Grill. The mushroom steak. I love how derpy these birds are, by the way. Look at them. Pick up serving. You need to build your mischief skill. You just grab the serving, you're not gonna eat it? Eat it. Eat it! Alright, she ate some. Let's get back to doing some more grilling. Grill. What do you want? Okay. Grill. Mushroom steak. Who's calling me? Workus! Do some more grilling. So many people swimming out there. Now resume your mushroom steak. What are you doing? Girl, what are you doing? One more mushroom steak to go. Oh, she's going to work. Never mind. Thought you're going to work. I guess she's not going to work. All right then. The theater they're painting? Someone is using my easel without permission? Scrap that. How's the relationship going? No, it's going good. Oh shit. Save. Okay. There you go, sweet boyfriend. Apparently we never did that. There we go. Get a baby. Alright, have fun, you two. Pregnancy test. Okay, y'all, I'm going to end it here today. Let's see if I can find someone to raid. Let's see. Alright, yeah, I found someone. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. I will be back tomorrow with either Cult of the Land or Don't Starve together. Still debating which one I want to do. But yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.